Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing, the podcast for and with manufacturing leaders. I'm Mike and this is Trevor. We want you to join us on our journey as we help you gain new insights, moments of clarity, and self-awareness.
Hey, if you're willing to step outside of your comfort zone and uncover new perspectives to make your next day better, grab your coffee and let's go. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Thanks for everyone coming back to the podcast. And to start off today, Mike and I have just been talking about our gratefulness for some of the feedback we've gotten. And this is new for us. We're trying to figure out what's working for the listeners, what's not. And we've gotten some really great constructive feedback, people that care about the purpose of making lives better through this podcast. And they've given us some insightful ideas, especially around sound quality. So we're running with 2 mics today for the first time. And we're going to continue to make shifts and adjustments to make your experience better. So thank you for everyone that's been open to supporting us by listening, sharing, subscribing. And secondly, if you have topics that you want some of our guests or for us to touch on, please message Mike or myself, and we will definitely get that on the show.
Well, very special day today. We have a colleague and a personal friend for over 22 years, someone that started shop floor manufacturing in HR, worked through the corporate world, and today works as a professor with a local college. Welcome, Lianne Gallie.
Thank you. It's so exciting to be here with you guys.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're going to spend some time talking about your career, different things that you've learned over the years.
There's been a lot of lessons over the years, I have to say. Yeah, there's lots that I could probably share, but we have 30 minutes, so I'll keep it to some key things.
Yeah, that's good. We want to provide the listeners with things we've learned over the course of work in manufacturing, and you've had some different positions, so good stories that we can go back and forth on. And we're going to have fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So let's think back to some of the earlier days and some of the ins and outs. You and I worked directly together. Mm-hmm. First introduction to you in HR, and it was awesome.
Thank you.
And we've had learning points, and we want to discuss those today. And
I mean, I've been working in the field for 27 years, and my first real, major position that I would call I call this my growing up phase was when I was working in an automotive facility, and I was young, early 20s, and still trying to figure things out. And I think I discovered that there's some good things and bad things about emotions and passion and how that can work for you or against you. And I think there was some really good lessons that I learned in that process.
And I think I was there for a few of those.
For a few, Mike, yeah.
Which is great.
So we talk about emotion. So that's they define that as a natural instinctive state of mind deriving from one's circumstances, mood, or relationships with others.
Yeah, so emotional state. Let's talk about the experience you had years ago, and then we can go back and really understand what that means and what did you learn from it.
Yeah, so I just remember a really significant time in my early career of. We used to have department meetings with all the HR people, and there was about 5 of us plus our manager, and we'd just sit in a room and, chat about what's happening and what do we need to do and those sort of things. And couldn't tell you what the topic was, couldn't tell you what was getting me going. But obviously I got very emotional about whatever the topic was, to the point that I was arguing my point so much that I got into tears. And of course the face red and the neck red, and all those signs of, she's going to lose it show up. And I think everyone in the room might have worried about me at that moment. And it was a turning point, I think, because I was looking around the room and going, people are scared about what's happening to me. And I remember when the meeting was over, I sat with my manager, who was a fabulous man and continued to be a mentor to me for many years after, and had a conversation with me about, it's great that you are he used the word passion, and I don't know if I always thought it was emotion, but I think it's probably more reasonable to say passion. And I think, Trevor, you have a definition of
Yeah,
passion.
they said passion is strong and barely controllable emotion.
And I was there, so I would say that fits the...
I was passionate.
Yeah, it fits the definition.
Yeah. So I think the passion that I was experienced, he said, I'm so happy to see that you're so passionate about this subject or any subject, but I think you have to realize that you have to get that emotion in check. And, you can't break down in tears or and my tears were not sadness. Obviously they were frustration and a little bit of anger at the situation. And I realized at that moment that if I continue to show up every day in this tearful, frustrated kind of manner, where am I going to go? And so I think that was really significant for me. I didn't change right away, because you can't change right away. It's just you have to learn some great lessons. But I think what I found was, through reading and hearing, and definitely 25 years later,
That helps.
helps. Maturity, have realized that it's about introspection. And I love the title of your podcast being Mindfulness, because I think mindfulness is really the piece that I came to discover.
Yeah, and Mike and I together going through our journey and really realizing that, hey, mindfulness doesn't mean you don't have emotions and passion. It's that moment to moment awareness of, hey, like I feel upset right now, and instead of judging yourself of like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry, I can't do that, or it's like, but how else can you just be aware of it in the moment and just accept it? And I had a situation last week where I got some news that bothered me. In the past I would have said, oh, that doesn't bother me, I'm just gonna ignore that. But I had a good discussion with my partner, and I said, hey, you know what? This does bother me, and I need to talk through this. I'm aware that it bothers me. And then at the end of the conversation, it was gone. It was just, I accepted it, and then let it go. I was mindful, where years ago I would have been the high ego of saying, well, no, that doesn't bother me. And you really got to, put those defenses down.
Yeah, and I think back to late 90s, early 2000s, we would hold on to something like that and carry that weight. And then it also formed perception from the people around us.
Absolutely.
And especially as we're thinking about making moves in our career.
Yeah.
Is that a limiting factor? Did I say or do too much?
Yeah, and that started to really resonate with me as well. I worked in a large organization, and I did want to grow my career. I wanted to become, the supervisor, the manager, those types of things. And it started to hit me that you've already set the tone for who you are. And I, again, thankful to another mentor working in the same organization who pulled me aside, not necessarily the same day or situation, but and said to me, I need to be honest with you. You're probably not going to grow here. Can you imagine the gut-wrenching word, like just the feelings that came out of that? And it took a long time to digest that. There were tears. Could you imagine? I'm a tearful person. But it was really enlightening for me. And, his comments were, you've shown that side of you that people will always remember you as the one who cries in a meeting. I'm like, interesting. So as my career went on and I had to make some hard decisions, am I staying, am I going, am I going to grow, am I going to stay exactly where I am? I moved on, and it was the best thing I could have ever done. Because I learned that, I learned something from that situation, that my passion is important, but how I display that passion is more important. And subsequently throughout my career, I, got better at, controlling how I express those emotions. And I said it before, but maturity is a big thing about it. But, and I think mindfulness is the piece that you have to remember, is that in the moment you want to explode from your excitement or anger or whatever it is. But as Trevor said, you step back, you think about it, you process it, and then discuss. And that's made a big impact for me. And I think the growth that I've had in my career has been because I learned those lessons so early.
You know, what's interesting is in automotive, for the most part, you feel like you're saving lives. Everything is owing yesterday,
Isn't that
last
true?
week.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to create with the help of Lianne today and the other podcast guests we have on from the past and in the future is how do we provide people with good insight to slow down and actually give back to the people doing the work,
Yeah.
create an environment where you can actually feel good and not always feel you're in a pressure cooker. So those are the things today that we're discussing. These stories should help
Oh, I hope so.
to learn from.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want my message today to be don't be emotional, because that's not the message that I'm trying to give. I think it's, you know, over time we've learned mindfulness is important, and that being retrospective, that's the wrong word, being very conscious of, you know, what we're doing and what we're saying is important. And I think if I could share one message is learn that early, so that it doesn't limit you in any way. And you know, I know that I'm good at my job because I am an emotional person, that I care, that I understand, you know, where people are coming from. But I also have to understand that that's, you know, a piece of me that needs to be controlled, I guess.
Yeah, and working with a woman in her late 20s, very powerful. And when I started working with her, the comment was, I feel like my hair's on fire. And at the end of it, and it's just, it was one of the best experiences to be a part of, because at the end she was like, you know, now I'm choosing more on when to show my emotions. And it's like, man, for someone at that age, because you talk about maturity, Lianne,
Yeah.
and the difference with this is if I would have had someone to just kind of pull me on the shoulder and help me make better choices on when to use that passion.
Yeah.
And you may feel it inside, but when you start feeling it, recognizing it, and then making choices on it, oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's what I've learned. And I think I'm much better at it now.
Yeah, good.
Awesome.
For sure.
Yeah, you said earlier on about showing up.
Yeah.
And now with maturity, years of experience, you show up as a different person
I sure do.
for the better.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, I do consulting on the side to help small organizations that don't have HR representation on a regular basis. And I think, you know, the lessons that I've learned have helped me become a better consultant in that way. I can offer, you know, better services because I come across better. I keep using the word better, but
Yeah.
it definitely is, right? I'm definitely a better person than I was in my 20s.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Those years help us all out. No doubt
Yeah.
about it. I can remember partially back probably first 5 years of my career when I got into HR, had the opportunity to go back into the production floor, which was great because I didn't realize how well-rounded you will be if you do a 2 or 3 HR, then into operations.
Yeah.
And for me, it was similar. It was around, am I bringing gas to the problem or water? And
That's a
real
great
story.
way,
That's a
yeah.
real story. I remember
Yeah.
being so worked up about downtime production and keeping people busy.
Yeah.
And all I did was create more problems.
Yeah.
And that was a signature line of yours, Mike. And I remember, you know, many leaders just stopping in their tracks and saying, whoa, what is in the bucket? Like,
Yeah.
what do I own in this?
Yeah, it's a defining moment. No different than somebody saying you're wearing your emotions on your sleeve.
Right.
The thing back then, we had lots of training, but not to this depth or level. And part of it was we all wanted to advance. It's basically a brand new facility when we started,
Yeah.
looking towards career path and making progression. So we tried to basically do the right things and not realizing what mindfulness really stood for.
Yeah, and I think one thing that, you know, that I admire about both of you guys is that, you know, we've worked with each other a long time ago, and we've maintained friendship over the years, and that's been amazing. But just watching the growth of you guys as well has been amazing. And, you know, what I particularly love about Mike's, you know, your career path is coming from manufacturing on the floor into HR and then going back out, and what that brought to the production facility and the people that you're working with. You know, there's a lot of people, I've talked with colleagues about this before. As part of my teaching at Fanshawe, I teach in the operations management program. the HR course. And one of the things that I like to stress is you need to have that HR stuff, whatever that looks like, to be a good operations person. And, I think it's really important that operations people understand the importance of EI and, being good leaders and listeners and those things. So, if we could share that with the listeners as well about the importance of, everyone calls us HR people the warm and fuzzies, but the warm and fuzzies are important in operations as well, I think.
Yeah, and I can speak from experience. Before going into HR, there was a lot of critics around what HR did.
Yeah.
Events, parties. But that's only
We're the party planners,
a very
Mike.
small fraction of what goes on. Yeah. And myself getting certified through night school and having the opportunity to work with Lianne and the others really opened up my eyes.
Yeah.
Now, the same person that gave you feedback, your mentor was mine too.
Yes.
And he came to me and said, I'd like to see you in operations again.
Yeah.
Because he understood the power of having both.
Yeah, and I remember at the time thinking, what?
Yeah.
We can't lose Mike. He's amazing, right?
And there was a lot of critics around that.
Yeah, and
There
I
was,
know a
for
lot
sure.
of people thought, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
But I know that I see it more often now.
Yeah.
In lots of industries where you guys are doing a great service with what you offer in doing that training of those soft skills and the importance of those soft skills.
Yeah, I think if you're lining up an operations manager, part of the criteria is to do a round in HR. Even if
Great
you're not
idea.
certified, do some sort of
Yeah.
shadowing,
Yeah.
some sort of co-op type thing, and then go back in
It's a great idea.
to the operations piece. You will have a different perspective that will help people and the business.
I agree.
Guaranteed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is that courage over comfort. And that's not only for the individual changing, but for the highest up in the organization. They have to believe that, doing a switch like that is going to have a long-term beneficial effect.
Yeah.
And we get short-term sighted in manufacturing, like just on the production results, and saying, man, if we did this switch, what kind of an impact can we have? I mean, in that study Travis Bradbury did on EI, 42,000 people, an average of $29,000 more per individual on earnings on people that were scoring better in emotional intelligence.
Wow.
And it's like,
Yeah.
it's out there, and eventually this will come more out in the space. And that's
Yeah.
kind of our purpose of talking here today. So appreciate your comments, Lianne, because it is a personal growth. It's humility.
Yeah.
It's putting yourself out there to say, yeah, we've done a lot of dumb things and said
We
things
sure have.
that are just ridiculous when I look
Yeah.
back. I mean, we've got a million stories of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that was a saying that I used
Oh.
to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, interestingly enough, I had an opportunity to work with Andrew, who was one of your previous guests, and some of the things that Andrew was talking about, I resonated with, and not personally, because obviously I've never been a general manager of an organization, but just some of his lessons learned, and that cockiness that you used to have as a young person.
Yeah.
And realizing that I don't need to be that way, and I'll probably get further if I'm not. And that's some of what I've learned. And some of my lessons, what I love about teaching right now is the new HR students, is being able to tell them that it's okay to make mistakes.
Right.
If someone had told me that early in my career, I think I would have done a lot better. It's okay to make mistakes, and don't feel like you have to be perfect and everyone needs to think you're perfect. My biggest teaching to my students now is don't answer the question right away, right? It's
Take a minute.
take a day, ask for advice, check with colleagues, but don't answer the question right away. And there's many reasons for that. If you guys think about it, it's processing, what is my answer? What's the impact that my answer will have?
Right.
And that's been really helpful to me as well.
I was very proud when we were launching a plant, and the saying was, well, Trevor's like a bull in the china shop because he just goes at it.
That's how I remember you,
Yeah.
Trevor.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay,
sure.
so that was not just a line in passing.
Yeah.
And those are one of those things of, and Mike, you've helped me with that. And when we're working on something and you're like, why do you have to do that in such a hurry? And I'm like, I don't know. So, I mean, we help each other out, right?
Yeah.
Like Mike's helped me out a lot. Lianne's, you've helped me. if you're open to it and someone just helps you get caught in the moment and say, so if you're trying to improve on something, find a partner and
Yeah.
say, I don't know if I want to be known forever as a bull in the china shop. Like, that's not the legacy. That's who I definitely was acting like. That wasn't who I was, but I felt that those actions were the right thing to do. But looking back now, it's like, okay, that's just lack of mindfulness.
Well, and interesting you say that because, Trevor and I had not spoken for many, many years because, I left the same employment that he left. I think he left first, then I left, or whatever happened. And then we connected through mutual, needs. Your business needed some HR representation to help your clients out. And I remember, the first initial contact was, "Hey, Lianne, it's Trevor." I'm like, "Oh, Trevor." Honestly, it was because I was like, the memory of Trevor was bull in a china shop, Trevor. And I can say you've matured, you've changed, you are
Thank
the
you.
person you want to
Awesome.
be, and that's impressive. So it's been such a pleasure working with both of you guys in this. Time is an amazing thing, isn't it? How we've
is.
all
Yes.
matured and
Sometimes we don't like getting older, but it definitely helps us.
the gray hairs,
It
the
definitely
lack of
helps
hair.
us.
I don't know.
Go back to what you said a second ago about
Yeah.
not answering first or being
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
For the listeners, think about when you're on the shop floor of manufacturing,
Yeah.
that environment doesn't lend itself to think that way.
Right, but you should.
Yeah, so if
Yeah.
you want to stand out and you really want to learn something and lead by example, you don't have to be the first to finish the race.
No.
Be the one that really pays attention. Be mindful of the people around you, and you'll make good decisions. People will follow you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's such a good point, Mike, because I remember, being in that manufacturing environment, and I say to people all the time, there's nothing like manufacturing. What do you mean by that? I don't know.
If
I
you
can't
haven't lived-
explain
if you
it.
haven't lived it, it's hard to relate
But
to.
I think it's that piece of, I feel like I need to immediately deal with what's in front of me, because if I don't, the whole place will burn down.
Right.
And the truth is, that's not going to happen. And I think we need to take a step back and make sure that we're dealing with the situation correctly. So I think that's great.
Yeah, and you know what? You know what's interesting? I mean, for Trevor and I, we do a lot of business here and in the States. And our influence in coaching to general managers is set your perspective around what we're talking about here today.
Yeah.
If you make a choice to really set the environment around being good to people,
Yeah.
paying attention, meeting their needs, self-awareness, will guarantee a better outcome financially, people, morale, all that stuff
Yeah.
will come in time. So
And
the
the-
general manager has the influence over that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, on a personal level, I think you as a person needs to make a decision on what your goals are and where you want to be. And you need to work towards that. And you need to be very, very aware of how your actions are going to get you there or not get you there. A long time ago, I set the goal that at some point I would be a teacher. And here we are.
There you are.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I'm not surprised by that.
Oh, well, thanks.
No, I'm not. Honestly, not at all.
But it was, that's something, believe it or not, when I was in primary school, I've always wanted to be a teacher.
Cool.
So here I am. But when I was going through university, I felt like 3 years was enough and I couldn't handle anymore. So I gave up on that
Yeah.
dream. And here I am now. But I think, setting those goals and making sure that your actions and the way that you present yourself are going to get you there. Someone once told me, dress for the job that you want, not the job you have. Have you heard that?
Yes.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, and I
that's
think
great.
it's the same in be the person you want to be.
Right.
And if that means a little bit of growth along the way, I think that's important. And I think, Trevor, you had a really good statement when you said, what I was showing up as isn't what I wanted to be. And I think that's what we have to realize is who do we want to be and start working towards that.
And they say that everyone's naturally kind.
Yeah.
It's being more mindful of stop being unkind.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of good, kind of circles back to what you're saying with the emotion and the passion and your lesson, Lianne, of it doesn't mean that you don't have the emotion.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that you need to be somebody else. You just have to allow yourself to be you.
Yeah.
Because
that's
trying to
really
be like
good.
anybody else is a waste of who you are.
Doesn't work.
And stop. And usually when we are showing up in a way that's not helping others and not serving ourselves, if we can stop and reflect, it's not usually what's inside of us, it's just what we've been caught into the environment.
True.
And we're just caught up into the moment.
Yeah, that's really true.
I can remember, and that along the same lines, Trevor, is we'd focus on the person, not focus on what went wrong. We'd focus on who went wrong.
Yeah.
And I learned from that. That's a mistake.
Yeah.
The more we can encourage leaders to look at the problem as what went wrong, you'll get people to buy in and actually help you solve the problem.
Yeah.
But if it's always about the people, they're not going to want to work for you.
Yeah, and I was teaching a lesson yesterday on employee involvement and the importance of its decision making is what the topic was, and it was about how do you make good decisions and that sort of thing. And one of the examples I used was at one of my past employers. You guys will know there was a need to go 24/7. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we couldn't maintain the production as it was. And what are we going to do? Because you can't have employees work more than 40 hours a week. They can't work 7 days a week. So the idea was, how are we going to solve this problem? And what we did, which was amazing, was ask the employees. And what a novel idea.
Right.
Let's ask the employees how we should solve this problem. And when you do that, you get buy-in because they were part of the solution. And I think we need to remember that when we are out, in the manufacturing world, on the production floor. We need something to happen, but if you want people to buy into it, you need to get them to help you with the solution. So I use that experience quite a lot in my teaching, and I remember looking out to the students yesterday, and they were all like shaking their heads, and I said, don't you guys agree? If you were just told to do something, how well does that go over, as opposed to help me find the solution? They're all like, absolutely, that makes more sense. So if we could share that with people listening about involving others in those decisions, I think you'll be a lot further ahead.
That's very good. And part of it is knowing what questions to ask.
Yeah.
We were growing up in an environment where we were dictating more so,
Yes.
telling people what they should be doing, how they should feel.
Yeah.
Where nowadays, from a coaching perspective, asking the right questions is far more powerful.
Using the one mouth more than the 2 ears.
Yeah, I was told that years ago. There's a reason you have 2 ears and one mouth, Mike. Try to use the ears more often.
It's a good lesson, isn't it?
And then I got into more active listening,
Yeah.
practicing those types of things, which is really around mindfulness
Sure.
when you think about it.
Yeah.
Paying attention to the person you're talking to.
Yeah.
Very powerful stuff.
For sure it is.
Lianne, I just want to acknowledge you as, for what you've done in your career, as Mike went through, the progression that you've made, the vision of getting to that level of teaching your knowledge now, chasing your dreams, being vulnerable, being a leader for women in manufacturing, which is still low, and we know that we need to grow that diversity. It makes us better as a manufacturing community, and that's some of Mike and I have talked about, being intentional, and we really wanted to get you on. So very grateful for
Thank you.
Open and sharing with others and taking some risks with us today.
Yeah, thank you very much. And if I could just add one more thing that I'd like people to think about, or women particularly to think about, is that when we're in a man's world, we think we have to be like the men, and which I was, and I bought into that. But I think we need to not be afraid to be who we are ourselves. And we need to, as you've said before on this, is show up as who we are. And I think we'll be more respected for being that way. So, don't be afraid to be you. I know that sounds a little corny, but I think it's important.
Yes,
It's true.
Don't be afraid to be you, and, set yourself some goals and follow those and work towards those. And I think, you can be successful in the man's world, as they call it. Hopefully one day it won't be known as that, but we're not there yet.
We will help it get
We
there.
will. We
That's
will.
good. But thank you. I'm really appreciate that you guys have invited me onto this. I've enjoyed listening to your podcast, and now I'm a radio star, as I've said to others, and that's
Awesome.
kind of exciting. So,
Before we close out, I want to say thanks for inspiring me 22 years ago.
oh Jesus,
And believing in me.
thanks.
Because I was a new kid in the block in the HR
yeah.
world. And I also want to say thank you for the friendship.
Oh, thanks,
That's always
Mike.
been, there's one talent the listeners don't know. Lianne makes a killer spaghetti dinner.
Oh, jeez.
That's the reality. I was invited to their place. with the family a long time ago, and it
Yeah.
is awesome.
Oh, that's funny.
I give
Love
credit where it's due. For
Thank
sure.
you. It's been a pleasure being friends with you guys, and I know it's going to continue on for many, many years. So
Awesome.
I'll look
Thanks.
forward to growing this community of mindfulness manufacturing as together we figure this out and how we help each other out, have a better day, and look forward to more feedback, great guests, and thanks for your time.
thank you
very much. Hey guys, thanks for taking the time and joining us today. We had so much fun. Please remember to subscribe. It's free. Share it with colleagues. Look for our next episode in a couple weeks.
If you want to drive results, the first step is realizing how you show up.
That's the essence of mindfulness in manufacturing.